she's got this incredible capacity for friendship. You know, she just got so much energy, passion and love that it sort of, it just comes out of her all over the place. And I think it's infused by her great love of the Buddha. So she so loves the three jewels, and she's got this real love thing with the Buddha and the golden Buddha. And the more and more Kamalamati becomes sort of freed by her own practice, the more and more she just wants to befriend and support others to really grow and become more and more free from their conditioning, their habits and tendencies that hold them back. And yeah, she's got this tremendous capacity for friendship. So sadhu Kamalamati, and really appreciate her coming along this evening and being open to being interviewed and not knowing the questions. So, and then Sarvajit. So it's wonderful to have Sarvajit doing these interviews. So Sarvajit's name, I just asked him to remind me earlier, is he who is all conquering and all surpassing. You know, it's quite a name. And what that means, you know, and I don't know Sarvajit that well, but I get a real sort of sense of this, what this is reflecting about him in his life and how he is now, and also all his potential. So Sarvajit was ordained nearly a year and a half ago on a 4-month retreat up in the Spanish mountains. And, you know, that's quite something. And I feel he's sort of come back. The three jewels are much, much more just infusing everything he does. And he's got all this passion for, he really cares about all beings and about this planet. He's involved in Extinction Rebellion. He's really been active around the whole area of homelessness. And he's on our council. He's joined our council, as has Kamalamati. So he's now a trustee of Cambridge Buddhist Centre. And already I just feel the energy coming in, and Sarvajit's capacity to really, really bring something very into being. He's very good at getting things done, having very good ideas and getting things done. So just delight in him coming along to Sangha night. Thank you, Sarvajit. So I'll hand over to Sarvajit and Kamalamati.
Oh, thank you, Josie. That was lovely. So thanks for that. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. Kamalamati's on the sharp end, so I can relax, really. But just to say, it's a real privilege to be interviewing Kamalamati. As Josie said, she's just friends with so many people in the Sangha. Any one of them could have been chosen to do this. So it's a great honour, really. I think I've known Kamalamati I was trying to work it out. It feels like I've known her forever, but must be around, it's 10 years or so anyway. I don't know exactly when we met, but that sort of time. And she always just comes across as very enthusiastic, bubbly, very welcoming, very interested in others. And I'm hoping to bring some of that out, you know, that friendliness that Jyoti talked about. But she also has this really deep spiritual side to her. It's very, very important to her. And she takes it very, very seriously. And again, I hope to draw that out as well. But she takes it seriously, but in a very unserious way. She doesn't take herself too seriously in many respects. And I think that's just a great value, which I think you know, those that don't know you, don't know Kamalamati, will see during the evening. Yeah, so I'm going to concentrate, I'm talking to Kamalamati now really, so I'm going to concentrate largely on Dharma, on your Dharma life, obviously. But I just thought, first of all, for those that don't know you very well, just a brief background of your sort of earlier years, your formative years. So I know some of that. I mean, you recently shared a beautiful photo album that your sister made for you, of you growing up together, which gave me some ideas. So maybe just a brief potted history to put in context where your Dharma life came from.
Gosh. Yeah, well, that's quite an ask, really, in a couple of minutes. yeah, I grew up in the, I was born at the end of the 1940s, and so I grew up in the 1950s and 60s in a family that was a very ordinary working class family. Mum and dad, my older sister, and then I've subsequently had 2 younger brothers. And but my sister and I were the first 2, and we were kind of a bit of a pair, but very, very different from each other. And I think I always, from a very early age, actually, I kind of wanted to help. I didn't know what it meant really, but from a very early age, for some reason, I developed this idea that I wanted to be a teacher. And I think that really has always been a sort of strand that's gone through my life. And I did become a teacher, and I became a youth worker, and I worked a lot with children and families with disabilities and various forms of challenge and so on. And I think I became very interested in sort of equality issues, I suppose. I think I've always had a strong sense of fairness and think wanting everyone to have a chance and that kind of thing. But in fact, my family were really quite insular in a way. I mean, I was definitely taught from an early age, just look after yourself, just, mind your own business, don't tell people your business, and never tell anybody what you earn, for example, don't ever tell anybody who you vote for. It was a sort of insular, rather, don't get involved, really. Don't get involved out there. Just look after yourself, and then that's all you need to really do. And I think from quite an early age, I kind of knew there was something wrong with that message. And I didn't really want to be like, it didn't feel right, really. So in fact, I'll leave it there and see what you want to say. Ask me next, I think.
So was there a sort of any sort of religious sides to your upbringing at all at that point?
Well, we were sent to Sunday school as kids because I think it was to get us out of our mum and dad's hair, mainly. And we did all. It was very, very, I suppose, traditional, small town. I grew up in Bedford, and we lived on the edge of a village and went to this village church. And in fact, my sister and I, when we were teenagers, we were kind of picked out of the crowd of youngsters that went to the church on Sunday to become Sunday school teachers, much to my amazement, really. But I think then at about, when I was about 14 or something, I think I really just couldn't go with the Christian message of the Creator God. It didn't make sense to me, and I completely actually rejected all of that. And when I went to train to be a teacher, I encountered people from different sorts of backgrounds, including I married a Jewish guy and sort of learned more about, kind of broadened my, broadened my perspective around culture, religion and so forth and so on. And I also became very political. I started to receive a political education through him and his family. They were very staunch socialists, and so I sort of adopted that as a bit of a religion, really.
It's okay.
And thought that through social action, political action, and education, the world could become a better place, and I was well placed to personally see that would happen. Sort of
I'm sure you're helping in that direction still. Maybe we'll come on to that. So what was your first encounter of Buddhism then? How did that occur?
Well, yes, I mean, it's quite remarkable, really, because right through my adult life, then from then on, when I qualified to be a teacher when I was 22, and I worked in teaching and in youth and community work for many years, and I was completely non-spiritual. You know, none of that. I never really encountered many people that were interested in a spiritual dimension to life. I didn't really even know what it was. I tended to kind of think it was it was all a bit kind of a strange mumbo jumbo or something. I'm sorry to say now, because I went right through my adult life. I had a son quite late on, when I was 40. And I had a marriage through my 20s, and then I was with another partner for 25 years. And it wasn't until my very late 50s, when I was coming up for retirement, that I actually realised that I wasn't leading a fulfilling life, that life in a way hadn't really worked out how it was supposed to have done. I mean, I didn't have this happy family life and fulfillment as the sort of matriarch of a happy family where we'd all, you know, be a bit like the Waltons. I don't know if people are old enough to remember that. And I'd really gone for refuge to that whole myth of the romantic relationship, the family life and so on, and it just hadn't worked out like that for me. And I left the relationship I'd been in when my son left home. I left home, basically. And amazingly, a few weeks after moving out away from that situation and renting a house back in my hometown, I went back to my hometown in Bedford.
In Bedford, okay, yeah.
And I just happened upon a little article in the local free paper about a meditation day. And I went along to it because it was being run by somebody whose name I recognised as somebody who'd been I'd worked with about 20 years before. And he was running this meditation day in Bedford at the Friends Meeting House.
Right.
And I went along and I learnt from him on that day. It was a day about learning the Metta Bhavana.
So it was Buddhist meditation, was it?
It was Buddhist meditation.
Right. Yeah.
There wasn't much emphasis in the group on Treeratna as such. So I didn't really learn a great deal about Buddhism at that point. But learning that meditation, it was like some amazing light went on for me. It was like I just knew I'd come home to something that I'd been longing, my heart must have been longing for.
Oh gosh, right.
And I couldn't believe that I'd found my way into a room on this Saturday in Bedford, where there were these sort of relatively or seemingly kind of sane and rational, sensible people sitting round and practicing the cultivation of loving kindness. It was like, wow, this
really?
is...
And it was that instant.
It was that instant.
This is what I've been missing, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
and we were sent at one point during the we were sent away into little groups, you know, the sort of way we do in Treeratna. Right. You go off into little groups and talk about things. And we were sent into small groups to sort of talk about what it was we were hoping to you know, find in the group there on that day and so on. And it was very obvious to me that what I wanted to do was to deal with the anger I was feeling.
Okay, within yourself.
Within myself. Yeah. I think it was because I was so disappointed by then that I was coming up. I was in my 60th year.
Okay.
And it was like it felt like I'd struggled all my life to find meaning and find and be involved with love, actually, you know, developing love, spreading love in the world. And none of it had seemed to really, I mean, I'm sure there had been some benefit, you know, I had been involved in some very good relationships, and I'd got a lot of lovely friends, and I'd got a wonderful family, actually. And I still am very close to that ex-partner of mine. So, you know, it's not as if everything had gone rotten.
But you knew there was something missing.
The thing is, Sarvajit, I don't think I knew. I didn't have a clue what it could be that I'd been looking for. And I think that's how I'd made myself so unhappy, really. It was as if there was always this, that sort of feeling of, oh, there's got to be more than this to life. And so although I'd actually, you know, lived this very, you know, very nice life in a lot of ways, had a lot of loving relationships, a lot of good things going on in my life. You know, my life looked from the outside like quite I suppose, a sort of successful life.
Right.
By samsara standards.
Okay, yeah.
But it was like I didn't, you know, there was something else inside, I suppose, that I just did, but I didn't know how to go about looking for it.
Right.
I suppose it was like that sort of searching in a dung heap for the jewel, except I didn't even know I was looking for it, and I didn't realise I was in a dung heap.
Oh, right. So anyway. You had this sort of instant response, really, to the Metta Bhavana, and thought, hold on, there's this whole way of dealing with love, you know, developing loving kindness for the world and yourself. So how did the Buddhism sort of develop from there? How did you get involved?
Well, yes, I mean, I just started going along to the group in Bedford every week, and I would find myself, I sort of didn't really quite know what I was doing. I just used to find myself getting on my bike every Thursday and riding along there. And then I was given 2 CDs by them to learn the Metta Bhavana, you know, to practice the Metta Bhavana and the mindfulness of breathing at home, and I started doing it every day at home. Okay. And these CDs had been recorded by Rutra Ketu.
Oh yes. Okay.
Who a lot of people will know, I'm sure, who at the time was the chair in Cambridge, at Cambridge Buddhist Centre. But I'd never been to a Buddhist centre. I'd never really, you know, I didn't know there were such things even, really, because there wasn't one in Bedford.
No, so you said it was at the Friends Meeting House.
Yes, it was a sort of an outreach group, and there was an order member who used to come from Cambridge.
Right.
Rutra, who used to be in Cambridge. I don't know where he is now, but anyway, he was a lovely guy, although I couldn't understand much of what he said because he's from Venezuela and his accent was quite strong and I often couldn't really understand him, but I did know that there was something about him that was very attractive, you know.
Okay, right.
Within him, he had this, yes, there was this. And I just loved being with the people. Yeah. And then what happened was that Chris, the guy who'd led the Metta Bhavana Day, and his wife Claire asked me if I wanted to go to this place called Treeratna with them, which a lot of people will of course know that it's a women's Buddhist retreat centre, Treeratna Buddhist Retreat Centre in Shropshire. And they said, oh, there's going to be this big retreat thing. It won't be like an ordinary retreat. Well, I didn't know what an ordinary retreat was even anyway. They said because there'll be about 400 or 500 people there. It's like an international retreat that they're doing. And our daughter lives at Treeratna and works there, and we're going to go in our VW van. It was dead hippie, you know, it was a real sort of throwback to the hippies. Would you like to come with us? So I went along to that. That was in 2008.
Geez, that was throwing yourself in at the deep end.
Well, I had this massive dose suddenly of Treeratna, or the FWBO as it was called then, wasn't it? The Friends of the Western Buddhist Order. And Sangha came and gave a talk there on the it was a long weekend thing. It was over about 4 days. And I was just blown away, not actually, I'm afraid, I'm sorry to confess, not by Sangha talk, because I lay in the back of wrapped up in blankets in the back of the marquee where he came, and I fell asleep in the talk. But my excuse...
We'll cut that bit out of the recording. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the thing is that I didn't, at the time, you know, I mean, I just hadn't really learned any Dharma at the time. No. So I was just there. And I had about 6 weeks before, my only sister, had died. And of course now it was a massive event in my life. And I realise now, I suppose, you know, how significant that was. And also that at the time I was very much in the sort of, you know, strong grief for that. So I did find myself feeling very, very, you know, easily feeling quite overwhelmed and so on. But I do think that experience of going to Treeratna and having this Buddha Field, the Buddha Field team were all there in force, you know, producing meals for 400, 500 people with smiles on their faces, and, you know, just this wonderful
real sink or swim experience then. But you obviously loved it, or...
I just loved it. I mean, partly because I do love people, you know, I love being around people and meeting lots of new and different people. I really can throw myself into those situations, I think, with great relish. So it was wonderful.
So you said that, I mean, you didn't have that much knowledge of the Dharma at that point. So how did that grow? Did you take to the study in the same way as the sort of meditation and
yes, I did. But it's a funny noise. Is that a dog? Anyway, well, what happened was, on the way back from that Treeratna trip, I remember saying to Chris and Claire, so how do you join this then? And thinking that you probably paid a subscription or something.
And then you were in. Yeah.
You were in. And they suggested that I came over from Bedford to visit the Cambridge Buddhist Centre. Right. And maybe sign up for an introduction to Buddhism course or something like that, which is what I did. And so that was, I think, in the May, and in the September I came over to Cambridge and did my first course with Sarvajit.
Oh, wonderful. Right.
Yeah. So I did the introduction to Buddhism, and then I started straight away on the Buddhism 2 modules with Vajrapriya, and I just absolutely loved it all. You know, I completely took to all of it, actually. Yeah.
So what was it, do you think, that appealed to you in the teachings?
It just all felt so right and true, you know. It just, I think there were, there was certainly a lot of complexities that I didn't really get at the time, but it was something about, I just felt able to go along with the flow of it all.
Right, and everything made sense each time you heard something new. It was kind of, oh yeah.
Well, yeah, more or less, I would say. I mean, I didn't really understand about ritual, for example. I couldn't really I quite liked doing it,
Okay.
It didn't really have a great deal of impact on me initially. So it wasn't until I started then going on more, on longer retreats and so on, and then I started to actually experience directly the effects of ritual and the conditions. When you're in the conditions of being on retreat, I found, for example, I would go out for a walk after a meditation into the gardens of Vajrasana, and all the flowers would be kind of vivid colours, and I'd think, how do they get flowers like this? I've never seen this before. So I think there were, I think I just experienced directly, it kind of unfolded for me, I think, and it's still unfolding now. I think I've been extraordinarily, I feel such a lot of extraordinary gratitude, actually, for what it is I've encountered, somehow.
And were there any particular challenges that you remember on the other side of it? Suddenly coming across anything that you went, "Oh, crikey"?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, the biggest challenges have been, being confronting myself, confronting my unhelpful habits and my my unskillful communication, and being in situations in groups and so on where I've been fortunate enough to be challenged with love, actually, with love and care and sensitivity, but also with honesty and encouragement to look at what I needed to do to transform.
Yeah, and it's a great combination, isn't it? That sort of love and support, but at the same time not really letting you off, kind of giving you those challenges and saying, well, hold on. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And I think coming across practices like confession, and rejoicing, the twins sort of, confessing and to looking into unskillful things, and owning them. But then on the other hand, being on the receiving end of people's rejoicings, which amazingly sort of, have helped, have balanced. It's a kind of balance then, because I've felt I've been able to take the feedback and the criticism, perhaps, of some of the things I've done, because I've not been, I've been, at the same time, I have had this sort of loving rejoicing in qualities that I do have, that I can develop further, that are, that are good and wholesome.
So how do you think you've most changed then? If you could pick out one part, the pre-Buddhist Mary versus the Kamalamati, what's the difference?
Versus the Kamalamati. Well, I think one of the big areas for me was learning to be still, learning to be, the third precept, stillness, simplicity and contentment.
Right.
And because I've always had this very buzzing energy and this tendency to rush around and want everything, I think I am really quite a greed type. I mean, we sometimes talk about people having a tendency towards being either a sort of hate type, not liking or something, or pushing things away, or grasping at things. And I'm definitely a grasper, I think, and so learning, I think, to sort of settle and become more still and learn to be on my own happily, as well as being out. Yeah. And my preceptor, Sada Hadaya, when she gave me my name, ordination, which means lotus, heart, mind.
Yeah.
So the lotus part, she said that she'd chosen, well, for various reasons. She says it's got layers of meaning. It's a poetic, symbol. It's a symbol of opening and flourishing. But she said also she thinks it's a good reminder to me, because lotuses don't rush around.
Ah, okay, right.
So yeah, lotus, and I love that actually.
Yeah.
The sense of being, planted in the earth, in the mud.
Right.
If I can remember that I'm, I've come from the mud, I'm planted in the mud, and yet I can rise up through the water, and the bud can open, and be this beautiful. That's the aspiration, of course.
Oh, it's so inspiring, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very inspiring.
Beautiful. So you mentioned the ordination. So what compelled or what encouraged you to ask for ordination? Because that's quite a big decision in the Buddhist path, isn't it? Is making that decision. How did you arrive at that?
Well, I'm afraid to say that I just flowed into it so naturally. It was so natural for me, because I'd been I moved to Cambridge into a women's community after I'd been practicing, only for a year.
Oh, okay. Right.
And having moved here, I became a mitra the same week that I moved into the women's community in Cambridge. I had my mitra ceremony. And
jumping in at the deep end. Yeah,
absolutely. And then having become a mitra, I was in a position, because I was just living opposite the Buddhist centre. I could volunteer at the centre because I was retired, and I could my health was relatively good, for an old bird. And I just was able to be involved in so much that that about a year after that, I went on and did a Karana appeal for a fundraising appeal for the Karana Trust. And at that time, I'd only been on a 1 week. The longest retreat I'd been on was 1 week. But I think that intense experience of 6 weeks living in a community setting with other women for Karana, sort of just, it was all seemed to sort of be unfolding naturally for me, that I just wanted to be more and more involved and kind of learn as I went along. I think I did a lot of just learning as I went along, and nothing seemed to be in the way of stopping me from asking for ordination. And I was also spurred on, because there were some of the order members, Tejasvini and some other order members, were organising a 2-week retreat for order members, women order members, and mitras who'd asked to join the order. They were going on a 2-week retreat to Jura in the Inner Hebrides.
Okay.
And
that's quite an appeal. Yeah.
I know, and I said to Tejasvini, I'm so envious. I wish I could go. And she said, well, there is a spare place.
Okay.
And, anyway, I think she just assumed I was going to be asking.
Anyway, yeah. So it wasn't just the incentive of a Scottish holiday. Yeah.
No, not quite.
Right. Yes. And so you then carried on, and you got ordained 3 and a bit years ago. Is that right?
3 and a bit years ago. Yes. In 2017, I went to Spain on the 3-month ordination course. Were 12 of us there. It was just such an amazing experience.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Positive, negative? Was there?
Well, it was so positive. I mean, of
Right.
course, there were some challenges. You know, there were times when I thought, if I've got to empty one more bucket of dirty washing up water on the lounge. Anyway, I won't go into too many details about the...
it brings you back to the basics, doesn't it, really?
It certainly, yes. It can be, it can feel quite... at times, I suppose, there were some, you know, sort of physical... I did find it physically quite tiring.
Right.
But I did manage myself pretty well. I mean, I used to, you know, generally speaking, by having a siesta every afternoon.
Okay, yeah.
When I could.
Mattie told me, napping is a really big part of an ordination retreat. You have to nap. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, we were told that as well. And especially then after we were ordained, I remember the leader of our course saying, well, of course, you are newborns, you know, so babies do sleep a lot and cry a lot.
Yeah. And so, and as part of that retreat, obviously, there was your private and public ordination. What did that mean to you? What did that sort of bring up for you, actually getting your name and becoming part of the order?
Yeah, it was quite magical, actually, to have that whole experience. I mean, Virya Jyoti mentioned my connection to the Buddha, and it was really up the mountain there on that course that I made this. I mean, I had got a connection with the Buddha, but nothing like it really came. He really came to life in my being somehow, and is still there in this sort of golden form, which and I think I'd indicated to Sadhudaya before I came away that I would probably be taking the meditation visualization practice of Amitabha, who's the red Buddha of the setting sun, as a lot of people know. And that had seemed up until then to me to be my sort of natural, you know, figure.
Right.
But when I was up the mountain, I wasn't finding it. I didn't connect to the red Buddha. But the setting sun where we were would shine in through the shrine room windows every evening, and it was golden. It wasn't a red setting sun very often. It was nearly always this golden sun. And I just then felt very much in the presence of the golden Buddha. Okay. And it was a very, very strong connection. And we practiced the golden light, Sutra of Golden Light Puja, that I think was written by Subhuti. I keep meaning to find out if he wrote that puja. I think he did. And that was, you know, that just went into my heart somehow, completely sort of entered my heart. And that's remained since then very, very much a strong part of me, of my being, really.
So you very much go for refuge to that.
Yeah.
Wow. And what's different? One last question, I think, because we're beginning to, and I want to open it up to the troops, as it were, to give you the really hard questions. But how do you see yourself having changed coming back as an order member? How's that? What's the difference for you?
Well, I think I'd probably sum it up in one word, believe it or not. I know that
no, I don't think so.
No, I do think it's actually, the word I would use is confidence.
Right.
I think I feel I've been gifted something so meaningful and so I don't know, it's hard to describe really, but
Yeah.
I think there's something that's where I just feel this kind of inner confidence or something.
So confidence in yourself or in the Dharma,
well,
or both of those?
it's in the Dharma, but then it's in me then. Because the Dharma's in me and the Buddha's in me, I can be confident in that. So it's about sort of the going for refuge has become so much a sort of almost like an integral part of who I am now.
Right. Wow.
Or something. I mean,
yeah. No, that's very inspiring. It sort of makes sense, but yeah.
Sort of makes sense.
No, I'm trying to relate it to my own experience, but yeah, it's very much coming through. Oh, well, I mean, thank you so much, Kamalamati, for sharing that. I'm feeling really inspired just listening to you. But yeah, I do want to give people the chance to ask you other questions and stuff. I did have another 63 that we haven't got to, but I'm going to hand back over.
In another lifetime.
Exactly that.
But
So
can I just thank you for being such a lovely friend, and I knew that I'd be in very safe hands this evening, and that you would just be, you've got a lovely way of bringing a sort of light touch and a very natural sort of
thank you. No,
humour and kindness. It's lovely, and I love having you as a friend.
And vice versa. Yeah, I was going to come on to that, what we've done together, but that'll be another time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Over to you, Jyoti.
Thank you very much, Sarvajit and Kamalamati. That really lovely interviewing style. And lovely to hear you, Kamalamati, talking about your practice and just to witness your friendship with each other. But yeah, now we've got an opportunity for anybody just to ask Kamalamati any questions or anything you'd like to say to Kamalamati. So I'll just have a look. We've got a question here from Jackie. So she's saying, do you view your pre-Dharma life as lost time or as significant preparation for what came later, or neither, or both?
Gosh, what a choice of I certainly don't view it as lost time. I think it's just yes, I think the sort of idea of it being in a sense as preparation. I think I just wouldn't have been really open. I mean, I've sometimes thought to myself, oh gosh, in some of those tricky years when I was working so hard and, striving so hard, doing this, that and the other and overdoing it and whatever it was I was trying to achieve and what have you, in my pre-Dharma life, if I'd had some of the wisdom and some of the practices, of course it would have been incredibly beneficial, but I didn't, and I just hadn't encountered it, and so I just did my best with what I had got, with the resources that I had got, and the Dharma hadn't discovered me, and I hadn't discovered the Dharma at that through all those years. So yeah, I don't view it as lost time. I think it's just that's been my journey, I think. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Kamalamati. And we've got thank yous. We've got thank you from Francois. Thank you so much, Kamalamati. And then Kula Priya. He says, thank you both. Very warm and entertaining interview, and Kamalamati. With your experience of working with youth, what do you think could attract more youth to Buddhism?
Well, what do I think would attract them to Buddhism? Well, I think if there was more emphasis on personal sort of growth, if you like, and introducing, if young people could perhaps be introduced in schools and colleges to some of the practices, so they could find out for themselves what benefits there might be for them, especially in this age where we've got a lot of, where there's such a lot of sort of anxiety and confusion and fear and so on. But it would need to be, it would need to be taken into context where young people are. It would need to be, it would need to be a program that would appeal to them. And I know there are a lot of mindfulness programs going on in schools and so on, and where, for example, young people are encouraged to use their phones to produce mindfulness bells to to help them. So but I think they'd have to find the benefits for themselves if they were to become really interested, to pursue it, because it's not it's not something that's always very easy for people to take up the practices and keep it going for long enough, perhaps, to really start to benefit from it. I don't know, really.
Yeah, no, thank you, Kamalamati. It made me sort of think a bit about, I know it's a sort of different age group, but when the centre was open and we had the school visits, and I know that some of the people on the team doing those school visits, incredibly creative.
Yeah.
Trying to help it become accessible.
Yeah, exactly. It's got to be accessible. It's got to be relevant to their generation and their lives. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, no, thank you, Kamalamati. Okay. Sarvajit's asked if he's allowed one more question.
Oh, that's greedy.
Given your love of your family, how does the Dharma inform your approach towards your family?
Well, that's an interesting one. I mean, some people will know that I've had and I still do have a very challenging relationship, particularly with one of my brothers. And my practice is really, is absolutely, what's the word? Is indispensable in coping with that relationship, if you like, because it's a bit of a dilemma, because he's so anti-religion, and he's therefore he's very angry with me that I've taken on this life, and he thinks I've sort of sold out, from how I used to approach life. So it is a very challenging thing, but I have got a lot of faith, actually, that we can come through this with the power of love and wisdom, and I think the more love and wisdom I can cultivate, the better the chances are going to be of me staying in communication, in communication, and developing greater understanding with my brother, actually. Other members of my family, they've all been very supportive, actually, and very accepting and very loving around what I've done, what I'm doing. And I've really as well, I think I've made a point of trying to integrate my family life and my non-Buddhist friends in with my Sangha friendships. So I've not kept two sort of separate lives going, so to speak. I think I've been quite keen to kind of introduce my son, for example, to my Sangha friends and so on, and yeah.
But it
Oh,
sounds.
and one of my stepdaughters who lives in Australia is going to become a mitra soon.
Aha.
So she's actually sort of caught the Dharma off me. So there you are. It can happen like that, I guess, sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Well, thank you, Kamalamati. It's lovely to hear that, and about how you can work. You can only work on yourself, can't you? And
Yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah.
really, that can have such a big effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you, Kamalamati. So we've just got some more questions here stacking up. We've got one from Francoise. So Francoise says, you mentioned anger, Kamalamati. I take it you don't feel this anger any longer. What happened?
Well, it's not that anger hasn't gone away in me. I mean, I think what I've realized is it's not that I don't experience anger and all sorts, the whole range of every other emotion. They're all there in me, and I am. I've got there's an aspect of me, and I think there's a lot in my family, whole background as a family. I think we're quite a hot-headed lot, if you like, and quite prone to sort of quite prone to kind of outbursts and so forth. So I know that that's still all there in me, and it can still come out, especially if I'm with my brother. So it's a case of how do I respond when I'm aware that that's coming up, and have I been able to transform it in any way and use, I suppose, the energy from it in more productive and more constructive ways, and transform it, in a sense, in myself, and see it for what it is, and choose ways of responding and handling it and dealing with it. So no, it hasn't gone away.
No, thank you, Kamalamati. But the awareness of it, it's the awareness of it.
It's the awareness, yeah. I think I used to be quite proud of being an angry sort of, righteous indignation and that sort of thing, those sorts of forms of anger. I used to think, oh yeah, I'm a very fiery, passionate person. I mean, blah, blah, it was such a lot of nonsense. I mean, really, now I think about it. And of course, that's where, our practices of confession and positive shame come in, and we can get together with our loving Dharma Sangha friends and, and sort of see all those things for what they are, really.
It's interesting that you say there about positive shame. I wonder if you want to say a little bit more about, just a little bit more for people who might wonder what that means.
Well, I think to have these moments of realizing, what I've, how I have, certainly how I've been in the past, it can bring up this kind of, quite strong sort of humiliation, really, and a kind of shame, regret for having, hurt, been done hurtful things in the past, through ignorance. Well, as it says in the puja words, that we recite in those verses, through my ignorance and foolishness. It was like, behaviours and so on that I'm not proud of, that I've uncovered and been able to see that they're not you know, that yeah, I do regret them. And so there's a sort of, but there's something very positive about uncovering those things, because, and then resolving, you know, that I don't want to do those sorts of things now. So it's a very positive, you know, you can move forward very positively. I don't have to kind of bask, you know, or wallow in a lot of irrational guilt about it or anything like that. Does that help?
It does. No, thank you, Kamalamati. I think that really, hopefully that's helpful to others. So I think we could have maybe one more question, if you're okay with that, Kamalamati.
Yeah, I can manage another one, I think. It depends what it is.
We've got a message from Colin, and he says, is there a Dharma teaching or a Sutta which you have found especially helpful?
Well, I think the Sutra of Golden Light is especially helpful to me, because it's this wonderful Mahayana story of the dream of Rudraketu with the golden drum, and seeing the Buddha who has the colour of gold. And it's just so full of this marvellous, inspirational, yeah, beauty and poetry, if you like, all connected up. And it's got it's actually got it's got a very, very long and detailed section of confession in it. And I think it's really benefited me to kind of really dwell in that whole practice of confession, because it's very purifying, actually, to really, really practice confession. And I've always responded well to it. I know some people find that very, very challenging, you know, especially if it's got, you know, when it's in our puja, for example, where it talks about the evil I have heaped up in my ignorance and foolishness. But it's always struck me as a very, very beneficial thing to somehow, it sort of cleans everything out, and is a relief, really. It feels like a massive relief. And I think in that Sutra of Golden Light, you get it in, you know, in abundance, really, that particular sort of practice, you know, way of practicing.
Okay, well, thank you for that, and for answering all of those questions, and so richly as well, you know, really drawing out some elements of practice there, Kamalamati, you know, around what confession practice means. All these things you've just kept really, really drawing out. So thank you very, very much for this evening.
Thank you, Jyoti. It's been lovely to be here among friends and know that, you know, I'm able to just open up, really. And it's I'd recommend it to anybody else who gets the chance to you know, explore their practice, their Dharma life in this sort of way. It's a very good practice in itself. It's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Kamalamati, and thank you again, Sarvajit. And a lovely combination, really lovely. So so we'll move now. We're going to move towards the end of the evening.